Hello, everyone. Nice to be talking here with you all again. This is the third episode of our short talks of WESCO. First one with an invited guest outside Europe, which is very good, and it will keep on going like this for every continent in the next weeks. This time we have Jonel van Schalkwyk, the Vice President for the African region of WESCO. Hello.
Hi.
Okay, thank you for being here with us. It's a pleasure to start this conversation with you and to hear your perspective and your role on WESCO and on esports. And we normally start these talks with the invited guests with the first question, that is to understand better why are you a WESCO member, and your path in esports and your connection. Why are we talking with you regarding esports? So what's been your history in esports specifically, please?
Okay, so I started out with my spouse actually in 2008. We set out to host a national competition in Namibia for esports, which was the first of its kind. So that was very successful. We got a very good attendance considering our small population. We had like 50 people showing up. And besides that, so that formed the foundation for establishing the Namibian Electronic Sports Association. So due to the success of our very first esports tournament that we hosted, which we called the NamLand Land of the Brave event, which falls in line with the slogan of our country, Land of the Brave, just so by the way. Due to the enormous success of the event, we were able to convince our sports commission and Ministry of Sport to recognize esports as an official sports code in Namibia. And since then, it's just been hard work. We have put in a tremendous amount of effort in building esports in Namibia, which is quite hard at times, considering especially our older generations, they find it quite laughable when you tell them that esports is like a national sport that you can get your national colors for and go abroad to participate in. So it's quite hard to secure support amongst the companies and stuff, but nonetheless we have prevailed. We have grown NESA considerably over the past few years. So it was actually closed down in 2012 when I was elected out of the committee by the community. But nonetheless, I picked it up again in 2013. We started it again all from scratch, and we got it up and running again. And today we are doing very well. NESA is building a very good reputation in Namibia. We are rolling out more and more events and competitions for our local communities. And NESA's focus remains first and foremost, of course, within Namibia. But besides that, we are also offering our assistances to neighboring countries and other countries in Africa, since we got recognition rather soon, if I can call it that, in comparison with some of the other African countries that are still struggling. Locally we are doing what we can, but sponsorships are a major problem. And we are hopeful that we can establish our community center in the nearby future, which will hold a great benefit for like our poorer communities who don't have access to computer facilities. So that is a big objective of NESA.
Okay, so you were one of the first ones to make history in esports in Africa.
Yes, I'm one of the founding members, and in 2016 I actually took over the presidency of NESA, and since then, we've been growing from strength to strength.
Okay, picking up on that and to go to the second question, do you think, I would like to hear your perspective after almost a decade of experience in in trying to establish a governing body or an organization entity in Namibia, in a country of 3 million, I believe, people. Yeah. Is that how you see esports in Africa now? And regarding specifically Namibia, do you think that being a small country is a good thing or a bad thing? Make it more difficult to unite the esports community? What has been your experience? It's easier because people are more connected, or is there some other kind of difficulties?
Well, all in all, I think it's very challenging since we don't have the numbers, so we can't easily justify our sponsorship needs to sponsoring companies since we have such low attendances, small numbers. So it's quite a challenge with that regard. And additionally, since we are a developing country, we struggle a lot to get support from government in a financial capacity. Since, yeah, as a developing country, I mean, obviously there are still people that don't have electricity and running water in their homes. So there are bigger priorities in Namibia than esports in general. But nonetheless, I feel that given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, our community has been very supportive. So yeah, because it's a small community, you do tend to get some more support at some places, but nonetheless, it is hard to still get attendance from the small community. You need to make it worth their while. And this we find particularly challenging because we need to secure funding to provide cash prizes at all of our competitions. Otherwise, the attendance is very poor. So there are a lot of challenges actually, but I think it's the norm actually worldwide that esports players. I don't know. I think it's because they see all of these professional players. Since we are actually on amateur level in Namibia, we don't have a professional setting for professional athletes. But nonetheless, the media is flooded with professional esports athletes. The public, they just see these enormous amounts of money in the prize pools, and they expect that on a local level as well. So that especially makes it very challenging to just keep attendance up and going, and to satisfy all of the players. We've even had players winning their national colors in esports, but then they still come up to us and ask us, well, what's the benefit? And it's quite hard to tell them, listen, you're representing your country. That is the benefit. You are like the star in your game title in esports. That should be enough, and we're going to try to give you opportunities to participate internationally. But yeah, it seems the motivation behind esports is very monetarily. So that is quite challenging since we need to allocate a significant amount of our budget towards cash prizes just to make sure that the community actually attend our events.
That is very, very, very interesting in my opinion, because it's a characterization about who are the players in esports, and exactly to whom are we working, or are we trying to unite, not only as entities, but as the players that are the base of everything we do, of course, and with the clubs and the teams, but and the distinction between professional and non-professional competitions and gamers, even in Portugal and in Europe, that it's a great debate. Hearing you, I would like to, well, you said the main things, but what is your view to Africa presently and in the near future? Do you think that is real? That there is a real possibility of a fast growth of esports, but in an organized way, not only in a commercial and private and profit-driven way? Or do you think that it's only the first option that will be achievable in a near future? Well, at least
I sincerely hope not. Well, I sincerely hope that it will not be purely driven by the financial aspect. I think there is definitely room in Africa for us to get esports well established and underway. But that is unfortunately very dependent from country to country. Like, for example, in Namibia, we're not one of the strongest economic or, like most developed countries in Africa. But nonetheless, we did get esports recognized rather soon compared to other African countries. So you see a lot of African countries, even our neighboring Botswana and Angola. These countries are struggling tremendously to get their governments to just listen to the facts of esports and how it's growing exponentially internationally. So there are definitely challenges, especially from the older generations, which I've experienced myself as well in Africa. I mean, you are dealing with people who grew up without electricity, let alone computer technology. So it's very hard to convince them that this is a new upcoming sport code to be taken seriously.
No, just a note. In the majority of the situations, those are the people that are in the governments and in the boards of sports and news decisions.
Mostly the people in government. So because from the sports side of things, the people are orientated for sport. They are aligned with the international trends of sport. But you need to convince people seated in government who are not dealing with sport explicitly necessarily, or they are caught up with traditional ideas of sport. So they can't grasp like the modernization of sports and the introduction of esports. So I feel that's a thing that's going to take some time to over some time. So, but nonetheless, I think there is room for associations such as Namibia. We have offered our assistance to other African countries to provide letters of support from our government directly. Because we have a very good relationship with our government, our Namibian Sports Commission. So we can easily, request letters of support from our government to extend to other countries' esports federations. And I've offered this to numerous countries already. So yeah, and we'll see what we can do to support them to also get esports up and running. But it is definitely a challenge. Since Africa overall is developing, there are other priorities, as I pointed out earlier, to build electricity power plants, to provide electricity to homes, water, sewerage. So there are definitely other unemployment, of course.
That it's one of the main characteristics. Well, you'll know better than me, but in my for what I've been seeing, even as a continent, the different velocities of development of the countries. So, as you said, the access to electricity and to computers and to internet, even only inside the continent of Africa, there are completely different levels of access. And so that is making it very harder to make regional competitions, for instance, with many countries. With some countries possible, but with many still very difficult, right?
Yes, yeah. So that's where we are fortunate to have South Africa as a neighboring country. So their esports ecosystem is well, if I can say, well established. It is established. But yeah, that's another thing where actually Namibia's small numbers is counting in our favor, because I see in a lot of other countries, even in the European countries, where there's a lot of infighting over who is the recognized esports association within the country, and I'm blessed that Namibia doesn't have that issue. Not yet.
No, and hopefully not. So last question. We're arriving at the 15 minutes, so it's going well. And the last comment that I would love necessarily to know, as as we both are WESCO directors and members, how do you see the role of WESCO in everything that we just talked about, and the possibilities of not only helping uniting in Africa, but also worldwide as an entity that can unite and open possibilities, intercontinental possibilities. And also regarding the aspect of the non-professional development of esports.
Okay, so I'm going to start answering your question by just noting that I joined WESCO in 2016. And since then, it has stood out tremendously from WESCO's side that attracted me significantly to the organization is the emphasis on youth development. So there has been some university leagues and stuff that has been discussed on WESCO, and this has motivated me tremendously to get Namibia's university leagues up and running as well. But yeah, Corona has made these things very hard for us. So we'll probably only be picking it up in earnest again next year. But nonetheless, we feel that. Sorry, I've been interrupted.
That is happening worldwide, and with these lives and people at home. That's always happening in many live chats. So no problem at all. But keep
okay, on. But so yeah, that especially tickled my interest from WESCO is to lay the emphasis on the youth. Because especially in Africa, where we have these difficulties, as I've outlined, as a developing country, I feel that if we can place the emphasis on youth by establishing community centers to attract youth that does not currently have access to computer facilities and these sort of things. So through the support of WESCO, I'm hoping that we can start to establish these sort of centers within Africa. Just to uplift the poorer communities to also get involved. And this will definitely be a big positive force in Africa, just to assist these kids to get some direction, to introduce them to technology and the tremendous amount of potential and educational resources that's available on computers in general. So I feel that's a very big aspect of WESCO that I would like to pursue and take as far as possible within Africa.
Excellent. And the intercontinental part also, no? Right? The connection.
Yes, yeah. No, we definitely want to get that up and running, but like I said, it's very challenging at this point in time since so many African governments don't yet recognize esports. So as soon as we can get that in place, then everything else will also fall in place much easier.
Let's hope so, and that has been and is being our effort, our general effort, and our main objective and our main goal. Well, step by step and path by path, it's really not easy. Even though, if I could say that if the coronavirus has something good, because it doesn't have anything good, but at this point for esports, in some countries it has been awakening for a place for esports. It's not a question of talking about the main importance or it's bigger than some other things, not necessarily, but the place that there is for esports and the utility that can be not only in the present but for sure in the near future. Even those governing bodies of sports and the traditional ones are understanding that there can be a utility that before all of this they didn't saw, but now that they are looking at it in a real way.
I hope so.
Yes, Jonel, great. We're closing in the 20 minutes now. Spectacular timing. Any last message? Any something that you would like to add, or just being an active part of WESCO? I need also to thank that to you and to, as you said, those nice words about WESCO and understanding it. And I loved that you talked about Angola, and also you didn't, but Mozambique, that is nearby, and regarding my native language, that is Portuguese, so that our countries connected to that. And I really hope to talk to you soon again near, because WESCO will for sure develop. We are now one-on-one, but future talks, we are hoping to talk between continents, and being a place or 3 or 4 people to debate in a wider range esports in the world. Um, Again, thanks for all these minutes, and it was a pleasure to talk with you. And for our viewers, I must say that any comments, any questions, any suggestions about this talk, to me or to Jonel or wherever, or to WESCO directly, you have our channels, you have comments in our YouTube channel, you have the emails on the WESCO site, so it's easy to connect and to place any other questions that, if not directly to us, they will come to us, and so that we can. I'm sure that you are available to those connections also.
Yes.
Bye, and thank you very much. Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Bye. Okay. Thank you.